You're in a 22% tax bracket. You do a $20,000 Roth conversion and you pay $7,500 in taxes, which means you're in a 37% tax bracket. What? You pay almost double in taxes for that Roth conversion, even though you're only in a 22% tax bracket. How does that work? And we're going to go over that here tonight. It's late. It's 9 o'clock Eastern time. I'm tired, but man, I just got done doing a video a couple hours ago on TurboTax showing you the effect of Roth conversions and what that does to your taxes if you have other source of income, which we're going to talk about here today. And I tell you, man, how the double taxation, we're not even talking about adding Social Security here. I'm going to show you the whole thing right here. This is crazy. You've got to know the tax code and you got to be careful. So let's go into this. My man Steve, who in my tutorial on TurboTax we call Joe and Jane Schmo, said he had $80,000 of QDI. I think he might have said, I think it was qualified dividends, maybe capital. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. He said $80,000 of qualified dividends, and he was going to max his standard deduction in which to do Roth conversions. All right, so he's married, filing jointly, he and his wife. They have $27,000 of standard deduction, which in this case he's going to do $27,000 of Roth conversions. So his question was to me is, what would his tax bracket be? Not his tax bracket, his taxes. What would his taxes be? Well, very simply, we can find out $80,000 of QDI. That's qualified dividend income. Qualified dividend income, which is or long-term capital gains. Both qualified dividend income is essentially any dividend you get from a typically publicly traded stock. So that's essentially most dividends you're going to get. So that's called qualified dividend income, which means it's tax preferred, tax preferential, if that makes sense. Which means if you're in the 10 or 12% tax bracket, you pay nothing on qualified dividend. If you're in the 22, 24, I can't remember if it goes up to 33 or not, you pay 15% on qualified dividend. If you're in the 33, 35, or 37, you pay 20% on qualified dividend and potentially 3.8 because of the Obamacare surtax. But either way, qualified dividend income is everywhere and always lower than ordinary income. So it's preferential. It's tax preferred, if that makes sense, other than relative to ordinary income. All right. So in this case, we've got $80,000 of qualified dividend income. And again, QDI and long-term capital gain from a tax perspective are both treated the exact same way. They're both tax preferential. So I said, okay, that's what he's living on, and now he's going to do $27,000 of Roth conversions because that's his standard deduction because they're above the age of 65 and married, filing jointly. So we add these two together. His AGI is $107,000. All right, $107,000 minus his standard deduction, which means his taxable income is $80,000. Now, taxable income of $80,000 puts him in the 12% tax bracket, which means he has no taxes due. There are no taxes due whatsoever because the QDI is all tax-free because he's still in the 12% tax bracket, and the $27,000 for Roth conversions are wiped out from the standard deduction. So in this case, he literally has AGI of $107,000, but he owes no taxes. Pretty sweet place to be, right? So now the question is, what happens if he says, I'm going to do $20,000 more of Roth conversions, all right? So I'm going to do $20,000 more of Roth conversions. I want to take advantage of the fact that I'm in a low tax bracket and I'm not paying anything. So I'm going to do, instead of $27,000, I'm going to do $47,000. What happens then? And this is where it gets interesting and actually this gets pretty hairy if you ask me. So we're going to do $47,000 of Roth conversions. We're just adding is an additional $20,000 plus $20,000. All right. So now what we do? What happens here? Now is AGI. Make sure that's dry. Is $127,000. Again, $20,000 more. That's what we've done. $20,000 more is his AGI. The standard deduction is still $27,000. So his taxable income is $107,000, which is a 22% bracket. All right. Now his taxes here, all right, this is what gets crazy. His taxes are going to be around $7,500 when all is said and done. Actually, and you'd have to look at my TurboTax to get the exact amount, but it is roughly $7,500. If we take our trusty calculator, $7,500 on $20,000 of income is certainly greater than 22%, which is the tax bracket he's in. So we take our trusty calculator, we divide 7,500 by 20,000 bucks. Oops, that's 37.5% rate. So 37.5. That's his tax rate. 37.5%, even though he's only in the 22% bracket. How? How could that possibly work? Well, the facts are this extra $20,000 of Roth conversions is OI, which is at 22%. All right, so because he's in the 22% tax bracket now. Before he was in the 12% tax bracket, but because he only had QDI and that was not subject to taxation whatsoever because he was only in the 12% tax bracket. And on top of that, his Roth conversions of $27,000 are all wiped away from the standard deduction. It means he had nothing. But now, because he's now going into the 22% tax bracket, he has to pay 22% on that, on the $20,000. Well, 22% on $20,000 isn't 37%. I mean, or isn't $7,500. $20,000 times 22% is only $4,400. That's only $4,400 in tax. But he had to pay $7,500. So where's the other $3,100 coming from? You ready? Is because now we're pulling $20,000. That $20,000 is making $20,000 of QDI taxable at 15%. And if you take your 22% tax bracket on your ordinary income plus your 15% tax bracket on your QDI, you're double taxed on that $20,000. You're paying tax on, so what you're doing is you're bringing forward $20,000 of QDI, qualified dividend income, that previously was not taxed. And on top of that, so essentially what's happening here is $20,000 of this is being subject to taxation, whereas before is tax-free, because you have additional $20,000 of ordinary income, which puts you in a 22% tax bracket. It's like the same thing with double Social Security with the tax torpedo, the double taxation. $20,000 of extra income makes essentially $40,000 of income subject to income tax. Now again, this is still subject better. It's still only 15%, whereas your ordinary income is 22%. But it's only $20,000 increase in your overall income. That's it, $20,000 increase. But because of $20,000 did damage to your AGI, which meant it went from a 12% tax bracket to a 22% tax bracket, not only do you pay 22% extra ordinary income on $20,000 extra for the Roth conversions, but it also pulls $20,000 of the qualified dividends to be subject to taxation as well, because now you're no longer in the 12% tax bracket. You're above $20,000 in the 22% tax bracket. And so now you're paying 20% or 15% on $20,000 that you were not subject to pay tax on before, on top of 22% on $20,000 increase in your taxable income. It's crazy, man. Double taxation. You gotta know how this stuff works when it comes to Roth conversions. We'd even talk about Social Security. Maybe tomorrow we'll get into that. Add to that on TurboTax with Social Security. But man, you gotta know this stuff, man, or else you're gonna be. If you don't, you could be paying a lot more than you think, even though you're in a lower tax bracket. I'm just telling you, tax brackets aren't the end game. It's how your income is derived. All right, we'll see you guys.